So we have a slight change to the agenda with respect to the questions you all are likely to have regarding PEPRA and legislation. We're going to start this second half of the meeting with Emily DeFlores, and then after her presentation, we'll have Danny Brown, and then if need be, we can take questions all the way up to the lunch hour. So with that, here comes Emily to talk about the new Reciprocity Form.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Yeah. I hope to get through this quickly. I haven't been feeling very well. I have a cough, so hopefully we can get through this without me having an attack. As you know, I'm Emily DeFlores, the section manager of the membership reporting section in the Customer Account Services Division. I've been asked to speak to you today to provide clarification on the use of the member reciprocal self-certification form. As you know, the Public Employees Pension Reform Act of 2013, also known as PEPRA, requires a different level of retirement benefits to those new members enrolled into membership on and after January 1st, 2013, unless they meet certain criteria. As stated in the circular letters 200-06312 and 200-05512, a new member is a new hire who has never been a member of any California public retirement system, a new hire who was a member of a California public retirement system prior to January 1st, 2013 and is not subject to reciprocity. And the third was a member of this system, being CalPERS, left and returned to employment membership after more than a 6-month break in service to a different employer. That would be public agency to school, school to state, public agency to public agency. However, if the member returns to membership with the same employer, state to state, school to school, or public agency to the same public agency, member would be considered classic. As noted above, one of the 3 items that determines if a member is placed in the new retirement benefit level is whether they were members of a California public retirement system with CalPERS reciprocity prior to their employment with your agency. Therefore, when your new hire becomes eligible for membership, it's important to gather this information. Failure to accurately enroll these employees in the proper level of retirement benefits, PEPRA versus Classic, will impact their CalPERS member account, contribution rate, and retirement benefit formula. This form was developed to assist employers with enrolling members into CalPERS. So now let's go through the member reciprocal self-certification form, which is located in your packets. I will tell you that on Thursday or so, we had an update to this form. Although we're not requiring employers to submit this or send this via the fax, we did put a fax number that was closer to my section. And also on page 2, we updated the employer instructions under number 1. We added employers must provide the member reciprocal self-certification form to all new employees upon eligibility for membership. Before it had upon hire. Okay, so with that, let's start with the form. On page 1, this is information about the employees. And this is to be completed, portion of it by the employee. It requests the employee name and social security number or CalPERS ID. The name of the most recent reciprocal retirement system. So they need to provide the name of the other reciprocal retirement system that the employee came from. As you know, on page 3, it has the list of the other retirement systems to which we have reciprocity agreements with. Permanent separation date from the most recent reciprocal retirement system. Provide the official date of separation the employee left the other reciprocal retirement system. The first membership date in any prior California public retirement system that is subject to reciprocity. Provide the membership date of the first reciprocal retirement system the employee was a member of that they established reciprocity. A member can move from one reciprocal retirement system to another without losing the related benefits. This allows someone to be a member of more than 2 retirement systems. With PEPRA, we need to know that membership date is prior to January 1st, 2013. As we go down in the future and away from this new period of 2012 to 2013, it may be possible that the other reciprocal retirement system membership date was on and after January 1st, 2013. That would not qualify them for the classic benefits. So that's why it's real important to know, what kind of movements they made. Next portion is the certification statement, which the member must select one, that they have not been a member. The member is certifying that they have never been a member of another California public retirement system. The second one, I was a member and am retired. This is for the member is certifying that they were a member of another retirement system, but they have retired from that retirement system. Member needs to identify that retirement system. And number 3 is I was a member of the blank retirement system and became employed by a CalPERS covered employer within 6 months after separation. The member is certifying that they were a member of another reciprocal retirement system and became a member of CalPERS within 6 months of separation from the other retirement system. The employee then signs and dates the form. Then you have the employer section, and this is to be completed by the employer. The CalPERS agency or county office of education and school district. The CalPERS business partner ID. The CalPERS membership eligibility date of your agency. Provide employees' membership date with your agency. The date the member was originally hired with your agency. The date the member reciprocal self-certification form was given to and received by the member. The designee of the employer, title and date that provided the form to the employee, and the designee signature. Again, on page 2, it provides information regarding reciprocity and the PEPRA 2013 employee status information, what PEPRA new versus classic member is. It also provides instructions to the employer. Please note that the instructions, again, on page 2 were changed to provide the form at qualification of membership. And then on page 3, provides instructions to the member and the list of the other California reciprocal retirement systems in which we are subject to reciprocity benefits with CalPERS. Do you guys have any questions? Get my mic right now.
Thank you. So my question is, if someone is coming from, I'll just use Marin County Schools, and they're coming to work for me at Sonoma County Schools, what do they mark on this form? They're coming from a school to a school. Do they fill this out?
So if they were in CalSTRS, they would probably want to fill it out. If they are coming from a CalPERS covered employer to a CalPERS covered employer within the 6 months, it's not required of them, but again, this is a tool for employers to use to know where they're going to be enrolling or how they're going to be filling out the enrollment page of my CalPERS.
Okay.
So when you go into my CalPERS and you're enrolling them, it'll take you down to the reciprocity section, and then you're going to say, is there reciprocity? If they're coming from a CalPERS covered employer, there is no reciprocity because they're already a CalPERS member.
Okay, that
So,
makes sense.
so we don't subject them to reciprocity like we do when they come from another California public retirement system.
Okay, so on the employer instructions, when it says they must give this form to all new employees, it really would be new members?
New members, again, this is a tool for the
Okay.
employer, just like the notification of exclusion. It's a tool for the employers to use to find out more information about their employees and where they're coming from. And I'm sure that when you guys go into my CalPERS and do a person search, you'll find out if they're a member of CalPERS.
Hi. If we hire an employee as a non-member less than half time, and it says self-certification form to all new employees upon eligibility of membership. So let's say we hired in July and they qualified with 1,000 hours in January. So now we provide the form in January.
Correct.
They won't remember by then that now they have to give the form. The employers, the district won't remember like to give the form at that point.
Okay, again, this is a tool for the employers to use to find out information about their employees. When you give it to them, I mean, the best point to give it to them is when they qualify for membership, because that's when you're going to be enrolling them into membership and using this information.
Yeah. Okay. And can you repeat what you said about the CalSTRS? Like if they are coming from CalSTRS, then they will be they accept a classified job as a non-member, then we don't give it.
Okay, so again, if they're coming from CalSTRS, CalSTRS is one of those California reciprocal retirement systems.
Right.
So you want to gather that information from them and then use that when you're enrolling them when they qualify for membership.
Okay. Regardless whether we are hiring them as a PERS member or not.
Well, this, again, it's to
Okay,
be
okay.
used when you're enrolling them into membership.
Thank you.
I'm looking at page, whatever page it is, the list, page 3.
Okay?
It's saying state teachers' retirement system is non-reciprocal.
So
I'm like confused.
they participate, and what we do is we recognize certain reciprocal benefits with these non-reciprocal retirement systems, and that's why they're listed on this form. So if they're coming from any of these non-reciprocal retirement systems, we will recognize PEPRA or Classic for them. So we have established reciprocity either by law. There's provisions in the law that provides reciprocity with these agencies. There's California public agreements with California public retirement systems that have a similar plan as CalPERS that we will establish a contract with, reciprocal contract with. And then we have these other and the reason we call them non-reciprocal is because they don't fit under the law or the contract agreement piece. And that's how we did identify them, but they do get benefits of reciprocity. So I think this gal was next.
I just want a clarification. So if her case where she hired a Marin County employee, it's going to be a classified member, would she even check this box at all?
If
I think
she's
that's
coming,
what she was asking. Would she even fill it out at all?
if they're coming from a CalPERS covered employer to a CalPERS covered employer, it's basically school to school, and the form isn't required because you're going to say no to the reciprocity.
But what about if you hired somebody from a city who
If
is a
it's
CalPERS?
CalPERS covered employer,
Still-
same thing. It's a CalPERS to CalPERS.
Even though there has been a
If
6-month,
if there's a more than 6-month break in service, then if they're coming from a city or a county to a school, more than 6 months break in service, then they'll be considered a new member. But if it's a school district to a school district, or a county office of education to a different county of office of education, they're all considered schools, and they would be considered, even if the break was more than 6 months, they'll be considered a classic.
but if it's a county, a non-schools, they would have to fill this out,
Correct.
even though, okay. So then that would be the third checkbox. I'm a member of the CalPERS, or of the CalPERS retirement system and became employed. No. Just a little bit confused with the
Okay,
form.
so covered employer within
Yeah,
6
just
months,
like-
they didn't become employed with the CalPERS covered employer within 6 months. It was after the 6 months.
Yeah, after the 6 months,
So none of those would apply.
none of them would apply, so they don't have reciprocity. That would make them a new, so if none of them apply, then they are a new member. Is that, do I get, or,
So correct. So the last one is really going to help you when you're enrolling them and using that checkbox on My CalPERS reciprocity, yes or no. If the last one is checked, you're going to say yes. And the same with number 2, if they were retired and they came from a reciprocal, but they're retired from them, you're going to say yes. If they check number 1, or they're coming from another CalPERS covered employer outside of the 6 months and they're not a school, then you're going to be saying no. The number 1 checkbox, or if they're coming from another CalPERS covered employer that is not a school employer, then you're going to say no to the enrollment page.
okay, 1 is no, 2 is yes, and 3 is yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Emily, we have a question via email. We've noticed some employees in MyCalPERS don't have prior school membership, even though we know they do. Is this a known issue?
Did they not qualify for membership? I mean, we're subject to what the employers provide us.
That's fair.
I want to go back to the CalSTRS person. If we have let's say, an instructor who's a CalSTRS defined benefit person in Marin County schools, and then they come to Sonoma County schools and they're going to pick up a part-time classified position because they were a part-time instructor at Marin County and they're picking up a part-time classified position in Sonoma County schools. So they have CalSTRS defined benefit membership at Marin County, and they're coming here into CalPERS membership. But because they have that defined benefit, will they, if they fill out this reciprocity form, would they go under the classic membership or new member?
Okay, so there's a couple things that have to happen first. Because they're already a member of CalSTRS, they may have a right of election for that employment and the classified position. So you first have to exercise that step, and depending on what they choose, would then depend on what you're going to do with My CalPERS.
So if they choose CalPERS, then would we make them classic or new?
So you would click yes to reciprocity and identify CalSTRS.
Okay.
However, just note that if they were part-time over there and they were in a non-member status, that could change what you're clicking because they're not really a member of STRS. They're in the non-membership status. So if they're coming to your agency qualifying for membership, and this is the first retirement system they became a member of on and after January 13th, they're going to be new.
After the form is filled out, and if the employee gives the wrong information, because when we go into the PERS, it just usually will say, yes, they're a member, but it doesn't give any other agencies besides schools. So if they give the wrong information, what happens at that point? And we're trying to, what are we doing with this information once we have it? Just, we've put them in as a classic because that's what their information says. So they're not really a classic, it turns out. So what happens at that point?
So if we ever find out that the enrollment is incorrect, we, by law, can make changes to that enrollment information. So that would require probably adjustments to the member contribution rate and their account and benefit formula. So, and on the form, it so states to the member that they're certifying that this information is correct, but if there's any changes to this information that they're providing us that doesn't qualify them for the classic benefit or for the pepper new, we can make those changes.
So then you would inform the county office or the district, letting them know, okay, there's a change now, or we've gone in and changed
Yes.
this. It's just not.
Yes, because then payroll adjustments will have to be made.
Thank you. Piggybacking on that question, so let's say we're relying on employee-provided information, which is incorrect, and you go in and you make the adjustments. Are we, as the school district, responsible for doing retroactive adjustments to their benefits or their payroll? Given
Retroactive adjustments will be required because the payroll that's being submitted is being submitted incorrectly. Probably the contribution rate may be incorrect.
Right.
And so we would need to, one, put them under the correct benefit plan and then correct the payroll.
Okay, and then would there be penalties assessed on the employer?
No.
Okay.
Because the enrollment happened not unless it fits under Government Code Section 20283 and they were not enrolled at all for more than 90 days when they should have.
Okay.
I have kind of a comment on the form. I think it's really confusing because the list that's on page 3 does say non-reciprocal, but the form asks for reciprocal. So is there any way to kind of change the verbiage on the form to say any agencies listed on page 3 or something like that? I think that's part of the confusion. Second, I just want to triple check because the gal in our office who does PERS has contacted her representative and gotten a completely different answer regarding this all schools are one employer thing. And, you know, she specifically said if it comes from another county school district to our county school district, and they were telling her it was a completely different employer. So I just want to completely triple check that any school district in California is considered the same employer.
As long as it's a CalPERS covered school district, county office to county office, will qualify as one from school to school.
Okay.
Can I just add to that? I just want. I mean, just so it's crystal clear in what we know what she meant by CalPERS covered school district, because obviously a school district can be covered by both CalPERS and CalSTRS. So it's really is that member, that employee, changing retirement systems. If they're changing retirement systems, then that same employer rule does not apply. The same employer rule only applies when they're changing within the same retirement system. So just want to make sure that distinction.
Hi, my question is concerning the looking up of a member online to fill out this form. And we've encountered where school districts have called us because on the screen online, when they're looking up the membership, it may say schools yes, and then it says member no. And it would be really nice if we could see something that says refunded, because we have districts that are maybe health benefit members. It gets kind of confusing to look at it and member no. We're not quite sure at that point, and we're calling CalPERS.
I can take that back to the office to see if any changes can be made, but.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Christy?
ready to move on to the next portion of the meeting? Great, thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Danny Brown with his legislative update and regulations that will be going to CalPERS board next week.
All right. Hello, everybody. I am going to start off with just giving you an overview of some proposed regs that we plan to take to the board next month. And then if we have time, I'll also just provide a little bit of a ledge update on what we know about SB 13 or anything else you guys want to talk about. As we can tell from just the last conversation, many things about the bill are still kind of confusing, or it's just hard to kind of make sure that we get all of the information across to everybody so everybody's kind of on the same page. So part of that our goal for that is to have regulations put forward, so hopefully everybody is administering it the same way, or at least kind of answer some of those questions that we keep getting. So this first package of regs that we are taking to the board in February, a lot of it will be dealing with definitions, hopefully things that we've already talked about, and going down the road of already administering it this way. So hopefully there's nothing in here that's surprising to you or different than what you've been hearing. It's just hopefully it'll be in a place now where we can kind of point to it. It's in the regulations. So we're going to be creating a whole new article in our regs that's going to be dealing with the implementation of PEPRA. So it should be easy to find. So anybody has questions about PEPRA, they'll be able to go to that article and find them. So we'll be starting off with a basic reg that kind of just tells the board has authority to promulgate regs for the purposes of implementing PEPRA. We are going to define a new member and classic member. The main thing here is defining classic member. We keep talking about what a classic member is. PEPRA already defines what a new member is. We're not going to change that definition, but we're basically going to define what a classic member is so that when we're using that term, everybody kind of knows what that means. So, and a classic member is basically anybody that's not a new member, right? We're also going to define what it means by active member, because again, in enrolling somebody, it talks about someone that was an active member at some time and then changes employers. And there's the 6-month break in service that person would be a new member. So we're going to define what active member means. Actually, I didn't need to change that. So I'm worried about touching on this next one, defining the subject of reciprocity, or defining subject to reciprocity. But actually, this has nothing to do with the discussion you just have as far as how we interpret reciprocity. It just means that we're defining subject to reciprocity, that they're eligible, that they don't necessarily have to establish it. It's just, are they eligible to establish reciprocity? And so we're going to put that in the reg so that's clear, so that if the person is eligible, then they'll meet that requirement and can be enrolled as a classic member. As you can see, a lot of these things are dealing with determining whether someone is a new or classic member. That's obviously one of the big things that we need to determine up front to make sure that they get in the right formula and we know whether or not PEPRA applies to them. We're also going to define break-in service. Again, this goes to the new member versus classic member. It talks about if this 6-month break-in service, and so we will be defining that a break-in service is a permanent separation. It does not include leave. So if a person's on a maternity leave or a military leave or some type of leave of absence, that does not constitute a break-in service. Then we have defining similarly situated employees. This one is probably, this one has to do with the contribution rate for new members. So it talks about that a new member contribution rate shall be half of the normal cost, or the same as similarly situated employees. But then they have an amendment in SB 13 that now says in order to pay half of, or more than half the normal cost, they actually have to collectively bargain it. So we are defining similarly situated to be someone in the same job duties that has the same formulas. The biggest thing is they have the same formula. So someone that is you have employees in the 2 at 55 formula are not similarly situated to someone that's in 2 at 62. And then, so we're making that distinction. The fact that they've added this language that you can only charge more than half the normal cost unless it's collectively bargained, it probably makes, in some ways, kind of mute, because if a collective bargaining agreement says they're going to pay more, then we're going to obviously follow that. This last one in this first package has to do with how we're going to calculate final compensation if you end up with someone that is both a classic and new member. So if you have someone that changed employers and the break-in service is greater than 6 months, they could be prior service as classic, and they're going to have their new service as PEPRA, and their final compensation is going to have to be calculated separately because they're going to have a limit now on this new service. So if you had someone that was maybe highly paid at their prior job, they won't be able to use that entire salary for this new service. So we're just going to define how we're going to calculate that. Then we have some other regulations I just wanted to bring to your attention. I'm not sure exactly when we will be taking them to the board. It'll be March at the earliest, but it could be much later than that. We want to define what a retirement plan is. A couple places in the bill where it talks about a retirement plan. The biggest place is where it says if you hire someone that is a classic employee, so basically someone that transfers from another employer, they would get the same benefits that were in place on January 1st or December 31st, 2012. Basically, it says the same retirement plan. So what does that mean? Does that mean the formula? Does that mean the entire benefit package? So what exactly did they mean by retirement plan? So we want to define what that means. And then we're also working on regulations dealing with the calculation of final comp with respect to the compensation caps. As you know, most people don't retire on December 31st, so that it's a clean calendar year. When you look at the 36 months, it could be, most people retire and that 36 months will actually go across 4 calendar years. And so if you have someone that is at the caps or above the caps, we want to just kind of put into a reg how we're going to calculate that 36-month final comp when they're hitting or above the cap and cross 4 calendar years, because each calendar year is going to have a different cap. And it's one of those things where it's easier to explain than to write, as we try to write the reg to make it clear, because it's basically you're going to prorate it, right? They're going to get whatever that cap is for that period of that 36 months. But to try to put that in writing is easier said than done. And then obviously the big one is the pensionable compensation. We will be doing regs on what is included or not included into pensionable compensation and be bringing that to the board. And then finally, there's this term called excessive liability. There's a provision in there that was a bill that was introduced by Assembly Member Mike Gatto. It's kind of the Bell-Glendale issue, if you recall. And so he has written a bill that got put into this package that basically says if you hire someone away from another employer and you pay them an excessive salary or compensation that increases the liability of a prior employer, you're going to be on the hook for that. So, Bell hired actually brought their police chief out of retirement, doubled his salary. Glendale's liability went way up because he had 20 years with Glendale, only a couple years with Bell. So Bell paid him a big chunk of money, and then Glendale got hit with the bill. So he's basically wrote a bill that would say, Bell, you got to pay for Glendale's increased liability. So I'm not sure how much it will be impact. Probably won't impact school districts as much as it's really targeted at cities and counties who, as they say, will take the larger cities or counties still away people from the smaller cities and counties. So I think that's really what it's aimed at. It probably won't have an impact on you. So those of you that aren't familiar with the regulation package, it is spelled out in law. We will take this to the board in February. Once the board votes on it, it gets submitted to the Office of Administrative Law. There's a 45-day comment period where you can, the public can send in comments about the regulations, ask questions, any issues or concerns they have with them. Once we get those back, depending on if there was any comments, we have to respond to all of them. If the comments, there was nothing major, we can then take it to the board for approval. If there's things that we need to fix, then we may have another comment period after we make those adjustments. Once the board does approve the final reg package, it does get submitted to OAL again. They review it for 30 days, and then it finally goes to the Secretary of State for filing. So this process can take anywhere from 4 months to a year. We will have, besides just the public comment where you can review them, send in your comments, we will have other types of stakeholder outreach just to get input from the stakeholders. The agenda item is out there. The agenda item includes the actual regulation language. So if you go to our website, you can pull up the agenda item and see the actual regs. So any questions about the regulations? Yes? Or something else? No. Well, we get into the other stuff in a minute, but we'll just stick to the regs for now.
At a previous meeting, it was stated that you were going to look at changing the compensation cap to fiscal rather than calendar. Is that going to be included?
Good question. Actually, we don't have to do it by regs. because the statute actually has they made a change in SB 13, if I'm understanding your question right. So you're talking about the compensation cap in fiscal versus calendar. We already consider it a calendar year. I don't know, that might have been something that CalSTRS was talking about. So the cap, we view the cap as a calendar year, and we weren't doing anything along those lines as far as whether it was a calendar or a fiscal year. What we were looking at doing was putting something in the statute that said, or in a reg about how we would calculate the CPI increase, because it goes up each year by CPI. And so they actually amended the bill the other day that would say that the CPI would be calculated from September to September each year. So there would be an annually adjusted based on the 12-month period of September to September. And then it will go into effect on January 1st. And the idea of that is the actuaries will be able to calculate it in October. You'll get that information and be able to make any adjustments you need to do on your system before it actually goes into effect on January 1st. But it'll be a calendar year cap. Any other questions on the regs?
You said they were online, the actual text of the regs?
Yes. On the board, if you go to our website where they have the board agenda items, and it's in the Pension, Health, and Benefits Committee, and the agenda item is there. All right. So just quickly, so SB 13, as I think we've talked about that before, that's the urgency bill that's moving through the legislature. The bill was amended again last week. There were, I would say there was a number of additions put into the bill, but again, nothing in there that really changes what we've been doing or our implementation. They added some more clarifying, what they call just clarifying language around certain items. I think the two biggest things that I would mention is it did put in the language about calculating the compensation cap each year. So the reason behind that is so that all the retirement systems will do it the same way. So that otherwise we could get out of whack, and different retirement systems could have different caps if they use different CPI periods. So I think the idea is that every system will now calculate it the same way, and the cap should be consistent across all retirement systems. They also put in the language clarifying that the health vesting issue, so the issue around where you can't offer a health vesting schedule more advantageous to your management than to your rank and file. They clarified that only applies to new hires. So anything that your existing employees, you don't have to change anything for your existing employees. So I think those are the two main things that may be of interest to you. The bill was heard on Monday, passed out of committee on a 4-0 vote. So there were only 4 members there. So all 4 that were there were voted for it. There was 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans. So it did get bipartisan support. So everybody so far it's going through as just a cleanup of what was already intended, so nothing has changed. They did not put any new language in there around pensionable compensation. We're still hoping that they will put some more clarity around what was meant by pensionable compensation. I know they're still working on that and working with the administration on what those changes may or may not look like. So there will probably be at least one more round of amendments to the bill as it moves through. So it's still too hard to tell when exactly that bill will make it all the way through the process. I would think it's probably at least another month away before it gets to the governor's desk. Besides that, there isn't a whole lot of else going through right now that impacts the school districts. It's been pretty quiet, so I think it's going to be a quiet year for pension reform. It seems like there is, though, a lot of discussion around healthcare pre-funding. We are getting inquiries about different cities who are trying to look at ways to change their health vesting schedules for their retirees, or at least codify what they're currently providing their retirees as far as health vesting. But on the pension side, it's been pretty quiet. So any questions about SB 13, PEPRA legislation? Oh, I got off easy this time. Nope. I know, it was too good to be true.
I don't know if you might be able to answer this one. If it's a STRS retiree, and normally they can accept a classified job as an instructional aide, if they come as an instructional aide, 180 days will apply? Because it's a different,
They retired from CalSTRS?
yes.
I can't answer that question because I don't know their rules. But if it was flipped and they retired from CalPERS, do we know what, someone over there know what the answer would be?
Because there are two different systems, so I wanted to see if the 180 days apply. System.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to make sure I verify.
Right. So it is the same. It shouldn't apply, but again, I don't know that when they take those jobs, whether or not someone would say, well, it's really a CalPERS covered job or CalSTRS. I mean, if it's distinct.
Sometimes they say the employer and the school employers, they offer both PERS and STRS, so sometimes it gets a little tricky.
Yeah, I
It
would.
has to be always same retirement system.
Right. If it's different retirement systems, those retired annuitant rules
Okay.
don't apply, but I don't know all the ins and outs between CalPERS and CalSTRS, so I would not feel comfortable.
Okay. Then it, right, okay, thank you.
Danny, we have a question / comment via email, and if you can't answer this is okay. We can at least get it entered in the record. Regarding the fiscal year versus calendar year, she heard your answer to Francis's question, and she says, so potentially, PERS may be a calendar cap and STRS may be a fiscal year cap. Can regulations going forward allow PERS and STRS to take different actions on items such as this? So again, if you don't have an answer, we'll at least get that noted and we can address for next time.
I can't speak for, I mean, there may be differences. I could just speak to what CalPERS is going to do, and it's going to be a calendar year cap.
Any other questions for Danny while we have him here? All right, we are a little ahead of schedule. Anthony Sweeney is in the building. Are there any questions for Anthony? I thought I'd give it a shot. All right, in these last few minutes, let's talk about any agenda items you all would like for the May meeting. One thing I noted is we will provide some sort of clarification or update, whatever we know at the time regarding pensionable comp, regulations and clarity. What else would you like to know about for May?
Employing retired annuitants, especially if they're coming back as independent contractors or employees of third-party providers, because the question's still out there on who gets reported and who doesn't. Is it based on what they're performing, based on who they're working for? There's a lot of confusion.
Noted, thank you. PERS STRS right of election, got it. Other items of interest for May, we will of course send out an email the next few weeks asking for additional ideas. If you don't have them today, you can send them to us electronically. Any other questions fallout from today's meeting? Great, then we're going to break early. Your lunch is at noon. You have some free time for the next 15 minutes. Thank you.